Farhan Lalji, man. What's the weather like there? Saskatchewan's getting drilled with that way we thought it was spring, and now winter's back rolling in here. You missed it by a week.
When I was there, I had some snow. The last night that we were there, I think we were at one of the pubs. I'm not going to say the name because they might not be a sponsor, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we were looking outside, and all of a sudden there's snow everywhere. We're thinking, what the heck's all this all about? So, right now it is 13, 14 degrees and cloudy here. My son's got a track meet in about an hour, so I'm done here, and I'm going to head over there and watch him run a few sprints. And beautiful spring day here on the West Coast.
Oh, jealous.
Sorry.
Yeah, jealous. Let's start hockey this time. We usually start CFL. Vancouver Canucks, Calgary Flames. It's looking slimmer and slimmer as the days go by. Now 5 points back are the Vancouver Canucks. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, well, look, 5 points back, but they do have two games in hand. Now you got to win those games, and Calgary's in a similar position, right? I think they're 6 points back, but they've got three games in hand of St. Louis. But St. Louis is playing at such a high level right now. I mean, there's a lot of talk that, hey, maybe this team's going to catch Minnesota, and then both Vancouver and Calgary are going to be chasing the Wild with, Utah. Looks like they're kind of falling off a little bit here. So, like I said, games in hand are nice, but you got to win them. And from a Canuck perspective, I'm wondering whether or not they can score the way they have the last four games, because this team doesn't have a lot of natural offense right now, especially with guys like Pettersson and Hedl and Höglander out of the lineup. So, can their goaltending, the way Demko played the other night, steal them games? Yeah, it potentially could. They can go on a heater, but they're going to have to go on a real heater the way St. Louis is playing right now.
Yeah, need St. Louis to falter too, which is it's not happening. Is it just every time he gets interviewed, I feel like Quinn Hughes just looks so defeated, so angry, so tired. I don't see that guy smile quite that often, Farhan.
Yeah, look, this guy's had to carry the team a lot, right? I mean, so there is a fatigue there. He's been playing the last 15 games, or since he had the time off after the Four Nations with an injury, and then when he came back, he's not been healthy. And generally, even Quinn Hughes at 80% has been really, really good. And there's been a lot of 30-minute games, and I think there was one game he had the puck on his stick. Literally on a stick in the offensive zone for 2 minutes over the course of an entire game. And I don't think anybody else had it on their stick more than 30 seconds, right, on either team. So he does a lot. And look, this team's not going to make the playoffs in all likelihood, but if they did, in my opinion, he should win the Hart Trophy. Because as good as McDavid and Draisaitl and McKinnon are, nobody means more to their team than Quinn Hughes. And that's probably an indictment on the Canucks overall, right? But this guy's also really, really good. So, and then in the last game, he didn't play particularly well, which is rare. And the Canucks wound up winning anyway. But, a big, big load on this guy. So, yeah, there are times where I don't want to say he's angry. I just think he's fatigued. I think he's emotionally and physically exhausted right now.
Who would be the guy on the Canucks that, besides Hughes, that you've been impressed with, that's really stepped it up? Is it Joshua? I don't know. He seems like he's been a pleasant surprise. Who is it?
Well, I there's a few ways to answer that, because I think the guy that was playing really well for a period of time was Nils Höglander, and then he got injured the same day that Elias Pettersson got injured, right? So, I look at the defense for the Canucks right now, and that's probably where they're gaining the most. At the beginning of the year, this team's D was absolutely atrocious outside of the top pair. Like, you didn't want the bottom four on the ice at any point. It was frightening to watch. Well, now, 1 through 6, it's a pretty good group, and I think they're getting a lot of support from the back end. Pius Suter is also a guy I think that there's a lot to like. I had a couple of points the other night, or a couple goals, I should say. And here's a guy that, is a bottom six center. Like, he just is. There's a lot of utility there. Not a great faceoff guy, but good on the penalty kill. And there's a lot of other things he does right. Well, all of a sudden, with all these injuries, he's been elevated into a top-line role. And not that he's a full-time top-line player, but he's more than done his part at the current time. So there's been a few guys that have elevated, and he's one of them.
And I know you don't cover this team, but you're in the circles, and I'm sure in some chat groups and all that. I don't know what to make of the Edmonton Oilers. I know they're missing their two studs, but like last night, they almost come back against Dallas, and then last night they kind of lay that egg a bit. I don't know. What do you make of Edmonton?
Yeah, a lot of us for years thought that this was a two-person team, right? And then everybody in Edmonton kind of rolled their eyes. Oh, here we go again. But this year, it's funny. With the Canucks a year ago, the conversation was Jim Rutherford said at the day before training camp that a lot has to go right, and it did. And then this year, a lot's gone wrong. And I feel that with Edmonton right now. I mean, the second half of last season, really the second 2/3 of last season, they were incredible. They carried that into the playoffs. And this year, a lot has gone wrong. Some players have been, okay. I think Darnell Nurse might have taken a small step forward, and there might be a couple of others. But then you look at and certainly Draisaitl, he's been awesome. But McDavid's taken a step back. Their top pair, with Ekholm and Bouchard haven't been as good. Yeah, haven't been as good. Zach Hyman hasn't been as good. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins hasn't been as good. Like all of these guys have taken a bit of a step back for an extended period of time. Now we know McDavid's still elite, and he has the ability to flick that switch at any point. But now these guys are hurt. So we'll see what happens when they all get back in the lineup, whether they can flip the switch back. But this is not a team that anybody should be afraid to face in the first round of the playoffs.
All right, let's go to the CFL. We have some fines out there for Omar Doman.
Big fines, Barney. Big fines. We're talking like Barney and Colson type salaries. Like the Lions are going to get fined $643,000 along with 2 draft picks, their first and second round pick. Now, this all is the result of bringing back Nathan Rourke and Matthew Betts last year, right? Every team operates at the cap pretty early in the season. And then all of a sudden you got to bring those 2 guys back, and that's big. So back in August, I was talking about $300,000 numbers with their management team and what's going to happen. And I think at the time, they knew they were in for a lot of pain here, but obviously they were going all in, and the owner was going all in, and he knew what the pain would look like. But I think their hope was, could we manage and move some things around that we can at least keep it under $300,000? That way, the fines are a little less, could be under $500,000 in fines, and we only lose 1 pick. And they knew, when they made the Vernon Adams trade, okay, we got that pick back, right? Well, guess what? That pick just went back to Calgary. So. And to me, like, I don't feel sorry for the Lions, right? Like, look, you knew what you were getting into. You went into it with both eyes open, and you deserve to be penalized. That's just the way it is. The thing that I'm struggling with, how does Calgary get 2 top 10 picks? Like, what did they do to deserve 2 extra top 10 picks? I don't get it, right? Like, it makes I know it's in the Constitution. That was all there. The Lions, again, this is not a Homer Vancouver guy, wanting to get his home team off. That's not that. The Lions should be paid and punished, fined and punished. But it makes no sense to me that Calgary, out of the blue, they didn't do anything for these picks. 2 top 10 picks. It's nuts.
I was wondering if you knew why, but apparently you don't either. I'm like,
well, no, I kind of do, right? Because they don't want the picks forfeited. The PA doesn't want the picks forfeited. And in other leagues, you forfeit those picks if someone does anything wrong. Like if you take too much time on the clock in the CFL or in the NHL or the NFL, you lose the pick. That's it. And even in the CFL, if you took too much time, you'd lose the pick. That's it. But the PA didn't want the picks lost, right? They wanted the same number of guys drafted, and theoretically, they wanted the same number of guys in each round because those guys potentially get paid more. So to me, the logical solution is have everybody elevate a spot up, right? And then take those 2 picks and put them at the end of the draft. So that way, everybody, except the offending team, like I wouldn't move the Lions up, but all the other teams kind of move up 1 spot, right? And they all get slight benefit as a result of what the Lions have done. And again, I just don't get why it would be Calgary getting 2 picks. Even if they got 1, then find the team that was second in the waiver priority and give them the second round pick. But the way they've done it, there's ways to make sure the same number of guys get drafted, but this is just wrong.
Were you surprised with any of the other teams? Were you expecting maybe Toronto to be over more than where they were? Because I think they're at about 87,000.
Yeah, when I looked at it, just in terms of kind of who did what in terms of their offseason spend, the Argos have gone through this for 2 years in a row where they just haven't spent, right? And they've just said, go, guys, if you want to leave, leave. And then we'll just kind of figure out what's left. But, there were some teams under a certain amount of pressure that felt like they had to get some things done. And look, they weren't that far over the cap, right? I mean, look, as I said on my SportsCenter hit today, most of those teams went over the speed limit by 5 miles an hour. The Lions, like They just drove right over the cap, and then they went back, and then they drove over it again, and then they went back and drove over it one more time. So, prior to this, the biggest cap overage was 2007. Montreal went over it by 108,000. So the Lions more than tripled the previous high water mark, right? So the other teams, no one's even going to think about them given what's happened to BC.
I was going to ask you, what was the ceiling before? Yeah, they blew by it then.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They drove over it and then some. And I'll tell you this: talking to them, even though they didn't get the payoff last year by an appearance in the Home Grey Cup, they would have done it again. And I say that because look, without that, they don't get Nathan Rourke. Right? And now he's their quarterback. And you can say what you want about his play in the second half of last year, but he's still a highly regarded quarterback. And they don't get Matthew Betts. So by having those two guys, they were able to get him extended or redone, the Rourke deal and the extension on Betts. They were able to get that done while they were still in the building. And those things don't happen if they don't do what they did. Now, is it worth that kind of money? They're paying Nate a lot. Now they're being fined a lot, but they would have done it again.
Oh, I love it. Double down. Let's go. What's up with the salary cap now? Like this has me scratching my head. And where are they going to might move the money somewhere else? Like what are you hearing there?
Well, it's been like that since they announced the amount, right? That they said the $18 million revenue increase and the cap increase by $600,000 per. Like we had that conversation, or $500,000 per. The decision to make in terms of where they were going to put the money. And they kind of wanted to put it everywhere, including some areas that weren't in the original deal, right? And in my opinion, there are potentially better places to put it than simply the salary cap, right? Like you could raise minimum salaries. You could put more into training camp stipends so that everybody benefits by it, right? Like I think the concern is that if you just put it on the cap, it's going to affect 3 to 4 players per team, and generally at the high end. And I think the PA wants to affect more players, particularly the middle ground of guys. And I think that does make sense, but you still got to stay within what your agreement was. So the teams, as a result of the questions around it and having set their budgets earlier, for the most part, are operating with the old cap. Now, will some go over? Probably. Will all go over? Probably. But I don't think they'll all go right to the top amount, which they're allowed to spend now. Like they might all go over, when I say over, I mean the old cap. They might go above the old cap by 100,000 or 200,000, but maybe not the 500,000 until there's a little more clarity on it. So we'll see. But I get where the PA is coming from, that we want to share the wealth a bit.
I didn't ask you, but after the combine, was there anyone that stood out that you didn't know about before that jumped out of the page?
Not really, to be honest, right? I mean, it's a disturbing trend that more and more players that should be at the combine aren't at the combine, right? Now, if you're at a big school and you've got NFL aspirations and you're Curtis Rourke or Alec Ayomanor, I get why you don't come. But I think the other players that are on the bubble would be better served to come. And I think the CFL is looking at potentially moving the combine up a couple of weeks, because if you do that, all those guys that are in the final throes of getting ready for their pro day at their colleges could still come to the CFL Combine, right? And still get to the pro day and do all of that. So, but in terms of, the top guys and guys that impressed me, I don't know that anybody really, really surprised me in a positive direction. I think the guys that I thought would fare well, the Jackson Finleys, the Nate Boschemans of the world, the Canadian DBs, I thought they were good. A couple of linemen on both sides of the ball that got dinged up and didn't really do much after testing. And, so I wasn't really blown away. I think overall, the D-line class and the DB class those two classes were very good, and I think some of the other spots were pretty thin.
Most disappointing part of the weekend for you was showing up here. We didn't have Western Pizza. That was definitely we know. And that.
I'm waiting for the frozen. I'm waiting for the frozen version. Colson, when you order it for me, make sure there's chicken on it, no pork, and other than that, you can be creative.
Trey Lance, where's he going to fit in here?
Your
on the
guy.
Riders? Is he going to fit in?
Your guy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. For sure.
Face of the franchise.
How does this work?
You're the home of the Riders.
How does the neg list work? Give us behind the curtains look.
There's 30. There's 35 guys on the neg list. You can put them on whenever. As long as you have room, you can put guys on. And if you don't have room, you can drop a guy and add a guy. So it happens on a regular basis. I mean, Vernon Adams was on the BC Lions neg list when he was a freshman in college. Like, you don't even have to be draft eligible to be on a neg list. And you'll see a high number of quarterbacks on everybody's neg list because, everyone's looking for the next one, right? And quite often, in most cases, those guys that are on those neg lists never see the light of day in the CFL because they're going to hang on and wait for an NFL opportunity as long as possible. The Riders either had room or made room, and all of a sudden, Lance still doesn't have a job, and Jeremy O'Day said, okay, well, let's just take a shot. Lions or somebody, Colin Kaepernick was on a neg list a year ago. These things happen. So if you're Trey Lance, I think you'd be wise to try to come up to a league like the CFL or the UFL. And while I think the CFL is way better, if he goes to the UFL, he could play right away, whereas that won't happen here. And you don't have to learn a new game. So I would never advocate for that league over this one. But if you've got short-term aspirations at that one particular position, it might make sense. But he's made $34 million, right? So how motivated is he? I don't know. Right, I think it was a bad decision for him to come out when he did, from a football perspective. But financially, $34 million, you can live pretty good for the rest of your life.
Even half of that is a lot of money. Yeah,
you know how many times the Lions would have to go over the salary cap to hit $34 million? Like 90.
So basically, it is for a lot of it. Then there would be some calculated risk, or not even risk. But a lot of it is just a stab in the dark then. Put them on the list, just in case.
Yeah, you know what it does is if this was the U.S., it would be a total, antitrust violation, right? Because all it does is it prevents a bidding war for any kind of a player bidding war. But in the case of a guy like Trey Lance, you might. Just like Johnny Manziel, you might. So, now if he all of a sudden wants to come up, then the Riders are in the catbird seat. They don't have to negotiate with anyone else to make it work.
All right. Well, you enjoy the nice weather there. Keep us in your thoughts here in Sasky, and then we'll regroup and do it again next week.
Can't wait. And listen, Colson, I want that. I'm gonna have the warm pizza in my hand for next week's hit. That's the visual. It should be right there, right? I'm not gonna eat it with a fork and knife, so I'm leaving it to you.
I wrote it down. Chicken, no pork.
Right on.
Thanks, pal.
Have a good weekend. See you later. It's Farhan Lalji.
See you guys.